On a cool fall night in 1955, strange creatures laid siege to a farmhouse in rural Kentucky. The inhuman beings, described as goblin or alien-like, attacked the farmhouse without warning or provocation, rattling the windows and doors as the wind howled and bright lights streaked across the sky. Fearing for their lives, the residents of the farmhouse defended themselves with shotguns and baseball bats. But this did little to stop the claw-fingered creatures and their ceaseless attacks. The residents were left with no choice but to flee, screaming, into the night. Later, police found evidence of a terrible struggle on the farm and reported eerie lights in the forest and inhuman voices. But no trace of the creatures was ever found. Now, 60 years later, the mysterious creatures from Kentucky may have returned. Here is one man's story. I live in Pike County, Kentucky. Most of the area is made up of small towns and rural communities. I often go for days without seeing my closest neighbor. I moved to this area for the peace and quiet, but I have received neither. I first realized something strange was happening on my property in December of last year when I noticed tracks in the snow around my home. At first, I thought they were from some kind of animal. They looked a lot like human footprints, minus the heel. At the time, I thought I was dealing with a single creature, some kind of wild animal I couldn't identify. But as more and more strange incidents happened on and around my property, I began to suspect that there were many culprits involved, and that they weren't animals. At this time, I couldn't keep my dog outdoors overnight. If I left her outside unleashed, she would bark herself hoarse until I let her back in. I woke often to find my shed doors open, many of my children's toys missing or moved, and my yard in general disarray. I gave a report to the police, but they made it clear they were not interested in my case, barring physical harm or large-scale theft. Then, in the second week of January, when I was having breakfast with my family, my 5-year-old daughter began talking about the kids without hair. "What kids?" my wife asked. "I saw them last night in the backyard. They were playing." "What did they look like?" I asked. "They were bald like Grandpa, and they weren't wearing any clothes." I was alarmed. Later that same day, I found the wreath that hangs inside our rear porch stuffed into our mailbox, and decided that that was it. I purchased and installed motion-activated floodlights, and for a time after that, the problem ceased. It wasn't until the end of February that our daughter informed us that the bald kids had returned. I woke up one night to the sound of my daughter's screams and rushed to her bedroom only to meet her halfway down the hall. When my wife and I were finally able to calm her down enough to speak, she told us that the kids were trying to peer into her window, but that they couldn't reach and were tapping on it instead. She hasn't slept in her own bedroom since. I phoned the police again, and they finally sent over a trooper. I told him what was happening, how I couldn't leave my dog outdoors after dusk, and about the bald kids. When he found the ground disturbed just under my daughter's bedroom window, the officer informed me very matter-of-factly that we were dealing with an animal, and I should contact the Game Commission and not waste police resources again. Almost every day the following week, I would find some evidence that something or someone had been on my property the previous night. Smudges on the windows, stones from the walkway dragged to the other side of the lawn, tears in the screen door. Then, on Wednesday the 7th of March, I finally witnessed the kids without hair myself. My dog woke me up around 1:30 a.m., scratching at the back door and whimpering to be let out. I noticed that the motion floodlight was on and went to the kitchen window to check that the shed doors were still closed. That's when I realized that I could see the shadow of something cast across my lawn. From where I was standing, I couldn't actually see the source of the shadow or the floodlights themselves. The dog was pacing circles around the back door, and I could hear something rifling through a box on the porch. Filled with more anger than common sense, I banged loudly on the window and yelled, "Hey!" Then I heard the screen door on the porch swing open and slam against the house. A few seconds later, I heard what I can only describe as chirping. It sounded much like a skunk, but more guttural. This was when I realized there was more than one person on my property, and the shadow, which had been reacting as if it didn't know which way to run, was quickly joined by another. For a moment, I watched as the shadows chirped at one another, and then I noticed a third figure out of the corner of my eye. Standing in the flower bed just to the left of my window was a small humanoid figure, about 4 feet tall, with sickly pale skin. It was looking towards the shadows and had clearly come from around the left side of the house. It didn't seem to have noticed me. Its face was featureless, save for large, round eyes, very reminiscent in shape and color of a bird's eye. It had no nose to speak of, and only a small slit for a mouth. It didn't move its mouth as it chirped, sounding more as if the noises came from its throat. It was definitely not a wild animal, and even more definitely not a child. I was too terrified to move and watched as the creature hopped over to the others, and together they scrambled into the woods on the right side of my property. There were at least 5 in the group. Since that evening, my dog went missing. I went looking for her during daylight hours, but couldn't find her. Though I did find many of my missing belongings scattered at the entrance of an abandoned mine shaft at the far edge of my property. I was too scared to go inside. The situation at my home became unbearable after that, so we decided to leave and stay with my wife's family out of state until I could figure out what was going on. But I'm at my wit's end. This afternoon, my brother-in-law and I went back to the house for the first time in over a month to check on the place and pick up some of my belongings. The house seemed untouched, which means the creatures are probably interested in me and my family, and not in the house itself. I did find a trail of prints that matched the size and shape of those previously left by the creatures on the property. The prints led to the woods behind my home and followed a stream that runs near the mine. My brother-in-law, an avid sportsman, could not identify the tracks, so I don't know what to think. I'll be spending the next 2 nights in my home and will try to take photographs if I can, but I'm on edge. I can't imagine what these creatures are, or more disturbingly, what they want. I need help. Thanks for watching. And special thanks goes out to everyone over at Week in Weird who gave me permission to narrate this story. You can find the original story on the Week in Weird website. There's a link in the description. And you definitely want to head over there and check it out. The version I read here was edited just for clarity and dramatic reasons, but the original is really worth the read. It's got a lot of extra details and photographs, including the Week in Weird investigation into this incident, so please do check them out for a more in-depth version. This is a bit of a short video for me, just because things have been super busy for me lately, but I finally have some free time coming up, and I have a bunch more videos planned, including some much longer ones for people who enjoy those, so I'm definitely excited to get those out for you guys. Thanks as always to my amazing Patreon supporters. You guys are really helping to keep this channel alive, and I appreciate you so much. Please like, comment, and subscribe if you're new, and turn notifications on. And until next time, this has been a visit from your Scary Fairy Godmother.